Yeah. Hi everyone, this is Destiny Diamond. Welcome back to my channel. This is just going to be a short labor and delivery story as well as how I found out I was pregnant. Thank you for tuning in and let's get started. Starting out with how I found out I was pregnant. Around December, I believe, I was feeling very fatigued and I can't really pinpoint exactly what the feeling was, but I guess you can just call it women's intuition. But my body felt off. I just kind of knew that I felt different. Then around the time that I was supposed to get my menstrual cycle, I didn't. However, even before I got pregnant, I wasn't regular. So sometimes I would get it every 28 days, sometimes every 35, sometimes I wouldn't get it at all. When I said I kind of felt weird and that I probably should take a pregnancy test, my significant other told me just to wait a couple of days because usually it comes late. However, something in me thought that this time was different. The first pregnancy test that I took actually said that it was negative, so I think maybe I probably did take it too soon. I told my significant other, like, hey, can you do this last pregnancy test with me? After a minute or two when I read the results, I was like in utter shock. I read the results first and looked at him and I kind of like gasped. We kind of just looked at each other like in utter shock, but he was like a happy kind of shock. And then he hugged me, and then we were kind of just questioning, like, is this good or is this bad? We went to the doctor to take a blood test just to kind of confirm the pregnancy with a medical professional, and it was confirmed with a blood test. However, I do have medical history of testing pregnant within my blood and actually not being pregnant. I didn't even believe I was pregnant until I got my first ultrasound. I believe the ultrasound was at 8 weeks. It wasn't until my second ultrasound that I actually told my mom, and the way that I told my mom was I brought the ultrasound that day to her house, and we had lunch and played games and watched TV, and at the very end, right before I left, I said, hey, I have a gift for you. And she said, a gift? Oh, I have a gift for you too. And the holidays just had passed because it was January. I believe she had one dress for me and some jewelry. And so I was like, great, this is normal. She doesn't suspect anything. And then I told her that mine was a surprise so that she would have to turn around. And I even got my little sisters involved and they turned around. And then so I presented the ultrasound kind of like this. She was actually kind of confused and she asked, is that my ultrasound? She thought that I had contacted the hospital and got an ultrasound of me when I was a baby in her stomach and gave it to her as a gift, like as a sentimental gift. However, no. And it kind of like took her a minute to realize that it was our ultrasound, as in me and my boyfriend's ultrasound. But after she realized that she was becoming a grandmother, at that very moment, she literally screamed at the top of her lungs and then like jumped on me, but then remembered that I was pregnant, so she like quickly got off and she was like, are you happy? And I'm like, yeah, but it's been kind of rough because I was throwing up and I was waiting to like tell my mom because I needed like some type of relief, someone to like vent to, someone to ask questions, someone to just talk to, and I was happy to tell her at the moment. The second two people that I told were my aunts, they're twin sisters, and then the third was my father. I actually have video footage of telling my father, so I will add that here. My two aunts were actually the ones that told me to record it because they wanted to see his reaction.
All right, I want to get your reaction on something.
Why does it have to be on my today?
Because I was asked. So, I'm pregnant.
Yeah, I kind of figured that. I was waiting for you to say something.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, how does it feel now that you're confirmed?
I mean, it's good, right?
Oh, Jesus.
For real, for real?
Like, for real, for real. Like, for real,
Like,
for
how do you
real.
know?
Like, I took a test already.
What the doctor say?
Said it's healthy.
Yeah.
I'm surprised at your reaction.
That's good.
But I'm also not surprised that you had a feeling. So what was it that...
You've been, every time I talk to you, you've been wanting to say something. Every time I talk to you. For like the last couple, maybe like about a month. You've been wanting to say something so bad every time. You're like, and I can hear it.
Yeah?
And then you're like, okay, bye. So
say that.
It's not easy.
Being cheesy. But I feel like I'm old enough to take responsibility, though.
I think you're definitely old enough to be responsible, but you're a very responsible person.
Mm-hmm.
You provide a child a loving home. He's gonna grow up with love. What more can you ask for? You got a mom and a dad who love them. Simple as that. I'm happy for you. Okay? I'm scared, but I'm very happy for you.
Yeah.
You know how I am as it is? So can you imagine the amount of worrying at this point now that I'm having inside internally?
You look like you're freaking out.
There's just so many things, Des. There's so many things that come with a child, young lady. I don't know if I made it look easy for you for some reason. There's a lot that comes with it. Clothes are expensive. Food is. Oh, my little child. It's rough, Des. It's rough and it worries me. It worries me.
I didn't mean to worry you, but... See, this is why we waited to tell you, puppy. This is like...
It's a wonderful thing. It's a child. It's the most beautiful thing in this world. And a woman is the most beautiful thing because she can make it and create it and bring it. It's just this world that worries me, Des.
Yeah, I agree. But we're going to do great. We are going to do great, aren't we? We are going to do great. We are going to do great. This is a happy time in our life. You can worry later. Be happy now.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Oh my God, Des. Boy, it's mother therapy gonna be a motherfucker, right? So when you find out what it is, do you want to find out?
I already found out.
It's a girl.
No.
It's a boy.
Yeah. You knew I wanted a girl. I was so happy mad when they said that. Yeah. It's a boy. But this is gonna be different.
Oh, yeah?
You're a grandfather.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I made you a grandpa today. Oh, Papi, you need a hug.
If the baby comes early, he could possibly come on my birthday.
Yeah.
Get to buy him his Jordans.
Papi, you in shoes.
I get to buy him his first pair of Jordans.
Bye, guys.
I think that my father was so excited that he couldn't contain himself because after I told him, basically everyone else knew. And then finally on my birthday, I just announced it on social media. I actually don't have any of my coworkers on social media, so I kept it a secret from my professional life until I started showing around, I want to say like 6 months. The first trimester was really rough because I could not eat. Not only did I have absolutely no appetite, but everything was appalling. Every smell, every sight of food. I couldn't even drink water without throwing up. Spaghetti tasted like soap. Noodles in general tasted like Windex. Watermelon tastes like throw up. I was going through something called food aversion. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but it's just a side effect of morning sickness when everything tastes disgusting. So nothing that you usually eat, you'll eat during pregnancy. Luckily, it did subside during the 4th month and I didn't have any issues related to pregnancy at that point. However, I believe at my 7th or 8th month, my 8th month, I started getting high blood pressure, and I never had high blood pressure in my entire life. The really dangerous part of getting high blood pressure is if it develops into preeclampsia. Preeclampsia is basically severe high blood pressure during pregnancy. It can upset the baby, stress the baby out, obviously stress the mother out, and even damage the mother's organs. So your organs can completely shut down and your body can fail you at that point. Which brings me to my delivery story, because around 8 months I started getting that high blood pressure and it was borderline preeclampsia. Therefore, my doctor really wanted me to get induced medically. I would never recommend anyone to get induced because it hurts. Doctors give you medication called Pitocin. When you take Pitocin, it produces something in your body. I believe it's called oxy something. I'll write it here. And that hormone naturally occurs in your body, and that is the hormone that gets you to start your labor. I worked at my job all the way until my induction date. I actually intended to take at least 1 day extra off. So I was supposed to get induced on a Tuesday and I took off that Monday. I really wanted to just spend some time by myself, get some good sleep in, maybe clean up around the house. However, on that Monday when I scheduled off, I took a nap around like 12 o'clock in the afternoon. I woke up in a puddle of like water. And I didn't know what it was at first. I thought it was blood, so I was kind of afraid. And then when I touched it, it was like really gooey and clear. And I'm like, I think I'm going into labor. I think my water broke. The first thing that I did was try to get up. But then when I tried to get up, it just gushed like everywhere. And I just felt like, let me not move. Then I texted my boyfriend and I told him it was time. So I'm horrible, like really horrible procrastinator, and I actually didn't get my hospital bag ready. However, I did have a list already of the things that I wanted to pack. I don't know how long you're going to be in labor for. It could take a couple of hours, it could take a couple of days, and so I really wanted to take a shower before I went. When I got to the triage room, I was greeted by a lot of very friendly and professional nurses. I actually gave birth at the hospital that I work in. But it was kind of crazy how I didn't feel pain for the first couple of hours and I felt extremely comfortable. So I came into the hospital around the afternoon, I believe around 5, 6, maybe 7. I wasn't in a rush because it is actually common for you to labor for the first 24 hours at home. The only thing that I would say is that I was extremely exhausted. When I finally got from triage into an actual delivery room, I want to say it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. They make you sit in triage for a while. I did eventually start feeling a bit of pain a couple hours after, so they gave me an IV with pain medication, and that actually made me so sleepy. It made me so comfortable that I actually got a few hours of sleep. Just as a side note, they give you a lot of paperwork to sign, and while I totally understand that because it is a hospital, I just felt like some of the questions were weird. The questions were very personal and some were not even about me. They asked a lot about my own parents. So like, was your mom abusive? Was your mom an addict? Was your father abusive? Was your father an addict? Have you ever gotten sexually assaulted before? And would you like to get therapy for any of that? When's the last time you took an illicit drug? These questions I thought were just a little bit insane. And I remember I used to watch a lot of TikToks during pregnancy. And because of that, I know that you have to be very careful when answering questions that are very personal, because I think that like they'll try to like call CPS on you and they'll treat you like a drug addict. If you ask for pain medication, they'll hold off on it just because they think that you're trying to like get zooted, I guess. Therefore, when it came to those questions, I didn't want to have any bias or prejudice against me, so I just kept it neutral. The less they know, the better. By the way, I forgot to mention that only my boyfriend and I were actually allowed in the room. Their policies against COVID-19 were very strict, so it was just us. Now, during visiting hours, you were allowed to have 2 other people. So I actually picked my father and my mother because I am the patient, and if I pass away, those two people, my father and my mother, is the 2 people that I want to be by my side just in case anything had happened. Like, if you think about it, who are the closest people that you want to hold your hand during really tough experiences? And so I chose them. Unfortunately, I actually was in active labor during the hours that they were closed to visitors. So my parents didn't get to see like the miracle happen or me push or be there. And I think that there was something wrong with my mom's phone as well. So when I called her, I couldn't even get into contact with her. And I wanted her to be on the phone while like I was pushing, and so she can coach me and everything. And so it was actually a very isolated experience. Everything happens so fast. In the morning time is when the pain really started to get to me. I was trying everything. First, I wanted to do unmedicated as much as possible. So I got on this really round ball that you sit on and you kind of like go from left to right. And then there was also another ball where you would lay down on the bed and then you would put it in between your legs and kind of try to move in a way that was comfortable to you. Try to open up a little bit more your hips so that the baby can slowly come out. I was walking around, squatting, exercising, talking, breathing. I was trying to do everything. A couple of hours later, when my nurse checked how many centimeters I was dilated, I was only dilated 2 centimeters. I had been in labor for a full 24 hours and I was only 2 centimeters dilated, and I was in excruciating pain. And that's when the nurses called it and said that my labor was stalling and that I was actually prone to infection and that I would medically still have to be induced. Therefore, they upped the Pitocin and gave me a cervical softener, and that is when the pain was so immense that I just couldn't take it anymore. I was shaking uncontrollably. I couldn't control my body. I couldn't walk. I couldn't control my body so much that I thought I was going to pee like on myself. Like I couldn't even control my bladder. So I was literally on the toilet holding my boyfriend's hand in pain, hyperventilating and shaking uncontrollably, and almost puked because of the pain. It was like I just couldn't get enough air into the room. The nurses were like, no, you still have to continue the Pitocin. After you're done sitting on that toilet, come back, take some more Pitocin. You still have to continue it. And I'm like, I don't think I can continue it. I think that I need a timeout here. I think I need a pause. And they kept insisting, and I said no. They were monitoring my baby and I, and because I had so much Pitocin in my system, I felt very stressed out. However, the baby was just fine. And so I'm like, I'm going to call it. I know you guys are nurses. I know you guys are medical professionals, but I need to stop this Pitocin right now. It's too much for me. So they gave me a few hours to breathe, and I was on the medicine ball, kind of just like swaying and trying to kumbaya, and my boyfriend was right next to me, like trying to get me to breathe and coaching me through it. And because I stopped the Pitocin, it stopped hurting so much. However, one of the nurses came in and he talked to me and he's like, I'm sorry, but you still have to continue the Pitocin and let me know what you want to do. And at that point, I'm like, I can't take the pain anymore. If we're going to be on Pitocin, I don't care if I'm 2 centimeters dilated, 0 centimeters dilated. I need that epidural and I need it now, because I was trying everything. I even tried some sort of laughing gas that they offered me where you kind of like breathe in, and I felt like that hurt even more. And that medication did not work for me at all. That pain management doesn't work for everyone, and you kind of like have to try different ones to see what works for you. Now, the epidural did work. Getting the epidural was extremely scary. If something goes wrong, you can be paralyzed, and that's not something anybody wants. Not only that, but I heard a lot of women complain about the site of the epidural and how it still hurts. Like even in old age, they can still feel like their achy bone area. And so at that point, to get an epidural is kind of a really big decision, because it could actually affect your quality of life after. But you guys, I couldn't take it. And when the anesthesiologist came in, she was a real sweetheart. And even the nurse that like held me while I was getting the epidural and was instructing me on how to move my body exactly or not move my body, they were all very professional, and I felt comfortable getting it, even though it did hurt getting it. First time she stuck the needle in my spine, she asked me if I can feel anything still, and I said yes, I could feel the right side of my body still. And so she adjusted it one time and I could still feel it again, and then the third time I didn't feel anything at all. So she did actually a really, really, really good job. A lot of women would probably complain about being poked over and over again in the spine. However, it's not that I didn't care, and it's not that it didn't hurt. I just felt like she was doing her due diligence as an anesthesiologist, because she wanted me to have the best experience possible and not be able to feel everything. So I was more so understanding. After that, it was pretty much a smooth ride. However, I did get a nurse that wasn't very nice. So unfortunately, I had to go to the bathroom. However, after you get the epidural, you are stuck to a machine and you can't walk around. If you're going to go to the bathroom, you have to get it approved by the doctor. Therefore, I had to ask permission from a nurse first, and then after the nurse alerted the doctor has to check you how many centimeters you're dilated. It's not good if you push, if you're pushing too soon. And when I asked permission, she said no. The nurse said no. Like, no, you cannot go to the bathroom. And I'm like, why? Like, I need to go. And so she's like, no, you don't. You don't need to go to the bathroom. You're just pregnant and you're in labor and you're having the sensation of going to the bathroom, but you don't need to actually go to the bathroom. This nurse would not let me go to the bathroom for almost an hour. And I was sitting in my bed trying to hold it for almost an hour. It's not super crazy when you're not pregnant and you're not in labor, but when you are in labor, trying to hold your pee, trying to hold your other things is so hard. And it takes your lower muscles in order to like stop yourself from going on your bed on yourself. And so I kept calling the nurse and I'm like, nurse, you don't understand. Like, I need to go to the bathroom. And it got painful. Like, my labor was getting even more painful because I was holding it. Actually ended up giving her a little bit of an attitude because at that point I really felt like she was just not doing her job. And not only that, because it made me more in pain. So she was like, so how do you know? How do you know if you have to go to the bathroom or not? And so I basically said, like, do you want me to put a finger up there and prove it to you? Like, I was being so mean at that point, but I didn't care. Like, I needed to go to the bathroom. And then she finally set my bed up so that I can go to the bathroom. By the way, if you're hooked up to an epidural and you can't go to the bathroom, they give you a bedpan, like a little pot that you go in. And then they, like, if your bed is like this, they set it up like that so that you can, like, sit. And that was the most awkwardest bathroom moment of my entire life. I've never had to go to the bathroom in a bed before. And not only that, but I felt constipated because I was holding it for an entire hour. And then on top of that, the nurse came back in like less than 2 minutes later and she's like, so did you go? And I'm like, can you give me a minute? Like, after like a whole hour of begging you, you're rushing me now? But at that point, I just didn't trust the nurse or even like her. And apparently the nurse is responsible for like wiping you after. And I told her like that I didn't want to be wiped by her and that I would wake up my boyfriend and he could do it. And so I woke up my boyfriend, and that's how you know you're in love. That's how you know you love someone, when they wipe your butt for you. After I was denied for a whole hour of not being able to go to the bathroom and I had to like use my muscles in order to like literally hold it, my contractions got way worse and way more frequent and therefore way more painful. Couldn't go back to sleep. I was uncomfortable for hours. And finally at 5 o'clock in the morning, I paged the nurse because the pain was so unbearable. I really thought that I was going to go into labor soon. I asked her if she can get someone into the room so they can see how many centimeters dilated I was. And I believe I was only 7 or 8 at that time. So I wasn't quite ready, but I was really in pain. So I knew it was happening soon. And I eventually asked if the anesthesiologist can give me something a little bit stronger. And so the anesthesiologist came in and they said, unfortunately, you're at max capacity right now and we can't really give you anything. So she gave me 2 options at that point. Option number 1 was to take the needle out of my spine and to put it back in. However, she told me as soon as she took it out, you're going to start feeling everything, number 1, and then if she puts it back in, there's no guarantee that it's going to work better. It might actually just not work at all. So I ran the risk of feeling everything during my labor. Then option B was to get something called like fentanyl, I believe. I really didn't know what it was, but I just chose option B because option A didn't sound good because I didn't want to take any risk. I was already in so much pain. I couldn't imagine even worse. And that was the last medication that she gave me. And I was so thankful for that. And she was a very nice anesthesiologist as well. She didn't make me feel like invalid, like my pain was invalid. I had a nurse prior who said that epidural doesn't wear off because epidural is a constant stream of pain medication, so it doesn't wear off. And then I had another nurse who said, yes, epidural actually does wear off because after a couple of hours, your body gets used to it, and therefore you can feel a little bit more than your previous state.
I feel like the second nurse was a little bit more validating, and the first nurse was kind of like, you're not feeling pain, you're fine. Like, she was a little older. So that very last medication got me so comfortable that I actually started dozing off. And by the time I woke up, I was in active labor, and I called the nurse and asked her to get the doctor inside my room. And I don't know what I said to her specifically, but when she got into my room, she was like, see, I called the doctor. See, I was listening to you. And I'm like, thank you for doing your job, I guess. Like, I don't know exactly what I said to her, but I was basically saying, like, can you just please call the doctor in here, because I'm ready to have this baby. Like, I felt like the baby's head was already slightly coming out. Like, I could feel it. Like, so when the doctor confirmed that I was ready to push, a whole bunch of doctors, maybe students, maybe nurses, I'm not sure, swarmed into the room. There were a bunch. There was like, I want to say like 10 people. And I thought when you give birth that it was just going to be the doctor and like one other nurse. I was mistaken. There's a doctor on my left side. There's a doctor in front of me. There's another doctor on the side of me. There's 2 nurses here, 2 nurses there. There's a whole bunch of equipment that was getting set up. There's this drop down like lighting that came from the ceiling. I mean, it was like a movie scene. Like, I didn't know that everything came into that. The doctors that I did have were so sweet, so gentle, so encouraging. I was trying several different positions. I actually initially wanted to give birth in kind of like all fours. Basically, like the bed would be up kind of like this, and I would be right here, like with my, I don't know if this is like a good diagram, but basically my legs would be like this, and then my 2 hands would be like cupping the top of the bed, and my head would be right here. I don't know if that's a good explanation. I tried that position. Didn't work. I felt like the baby was coming out way too fast, and like I was not ready for it. And I also felt like I was gonna rip easily in that position. And so I went on my back and I lifted my leg and I went onto my side, and I gave birth with my leg up on my side. Eventually they turned me around and just faced me forward when I think that my baby was stuck in the canal at some point. So in an emergency, they actually had to put me in a different position at the very, very end. But I was pushing and pushing. I was like feeling the contractions. Like when a contraction would go, I would like, I know you're not supposed to hold your breath, but I held my breath. Once I started feeling a contraction coming on, and it got to the point where it was like unbearably painful, I held my breath and I was like, and then I started pushing. I want to say I did that at least 20 times, but the contractions got worse and worse and worse, as in more painful and more painful and more painful. But it's kind of funny because what I did notice is that it could have been even more painful without the epidural. I don't know how women do it unmedicated. Kudos to you if you ever did it unmedicated, because I could never. I was feeling the baby come out, but it wasn't as painful as I thought it would be. Thank goodness I had the epidural. One of my cousins said that she felt everything even though she had the epidural. Another person said that she felt absolutely nothing and that she couldn't even lift her legs up, and that definitely wasn't my case. I was very mobile. So I guess that pain medication just affects everyone differently. Finally, during my last 2 or 3 pushes, I was so exhausted. It's not that I wanted to give half of an effort or anything, but it was almost like my body was giving up on me. And the very last 2 or 3 pushes, I can feel myself rip open like several different times, and I was a little bit afraid of it, but at that point I was over it. Like, I didn't even care at that point. I just wanted him out. So I tried to push him as hard as possible. They adjusted my body. He came out, and so did like a whole bunch of like liquids. I lost a lot. I eventually actually had to stay in the hospital because I had a major blood loss. I did hemorrhage, and I had to get a transfusion. I was actually anemic during my pregnancy because I wasn't eating properly. Even though I was taking the prenatal vitamins every single day, it just wasn't enough. And so the anemia before my pregnancy affected me definitely postpartum.
The doctor even said that it would take at least 1 month in order for me to even feel normal again when it came to like my levels of fatigue. There are other side effects to it as well, like you'll feel the room spinning, your vision loss. But overall, I think that it was a very beautiful experience. And at the moment, my boyfriend said that he was like choking back tears and that like I was so strong and that he was so proud of me. And they put the baby on my chest and he quickly found my face. And the first thing that he did when I looked at him was he actually smiled at me. He came out like cried a little bit, and then as soon as he was on me, he stopped and he smiled at me. And that was like the moment that I was like, oh my god, I love this kid already. Now, after the nurse cleaned off my baby while he was laying on me, they went to go weigh him. And then after they weighed him, my boyfriend held him for quite some time. And I kind of just sat there like with my legs up and like trying to process everything. And I was so tired and I didn't want to move. Like I just didn't want to do anything for like a minute. Like I couldn't be happy. I couldn't like hold him. I couldn't like get into mom mode. I kind of just like stood there for a second just to like, I don't know, I guess process things, but I just needed a still moment just to feel like okay again. Lastly, when the visiting hours finally opened up, my father came. He was the first person to come and hold the baby. I think it's kind of funny because my parents are actually divorced, so they wanted to purposely come at different times. So my father came first and he was waiting right outside and he was like telling me how nervous he was and about how excited he was, and he was so eager to finally hold the baby. And I believe he fed him formula. The first person to feed him formula was my father. And then we stood there for a while and I finally got to eat again. And so I wanted some Dunkin' Donuts. I actually ended up accidentally dropping my coffee, I remember, and the nurse was so nice about it. She was like, no, don't worry about it, just rest. And I got outside of that room into a different room where they kind of just have you heal, I guess, for a couple of days. Oh yes, I remember. It's called the recovery room. During that time, they give you a lot of information on how to properly take care of the baby, as well as they give you a chance to talk to the lactation consultant. And she taught me how to breastfeed and try to hand express. It was very quiet, like very peaceful. I remember, I don't know if you get like a whole bunch of hormones and it kind of just makes you happy, but I was happy. Like I wasn't sad. I was like relieved and happy that he's finally here. And I was like, I don't want to say high because that's like a really bad word, but like just like high on happiness. Like the dopamine was there. After a while of being in the recovery room, I wanted to just go home and be in my own bed. So I was like just ready to go after the blood transfusion, and they eventually discharged me and we went home and then we started our life. So yes, that is my labor and delivery story. I hope you guys really liked it. I really just wanted to, I don't know, express how I felt. I haven't really told my story to anyone. I kept very private this whole time, and but I'm glad everything turned out just fine. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you got this far, I really appreciate it. Leave me a like, hit subscribe, and I'll talk to you another time. Bye.